Welcome on behalf of IMU. We would now have the keynote address by Professor TV Rao, delivered through Skype.
Hi. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. May I begin? Janet and all the distinguished panelists and delegates to the conference and students, I would have loved to be with you all, and it's unfortunate that I am not all that fit to be able to travel to Udaipur, but I'm happy and I want to thank Janan for giving me this privilege of addressing you today from Ahmedabad. I think you have chosen a wonderful theme for the HR conclave, transforming HR for new business priorities. And you have very distinguished panelists representing a variety of great corporations today, and I'm sure you will enjoy their discussions and their inputs. I'd like to take this opportunity to share a few of my thoughts on the theme of the conclave, transforming HR for new business priorities. I'm sure we are all witnessing very peculiar time in our country at this point of time. We're going through a little bit of a bad time as a country. Our brand, India brand, seems to be taking a little bit of a beating because of our own fault and the way I suppose media very rightly from their perspective place it, but it does a lot of damage to the brand while internal talent remains intact. And I want to bring to the notice of all of you what this actually means. I would like to introduce the concept of intellectual capital. This concept was not that much talked about until about 15 years ago when Infosys published as a part of their balance sheet a value of people. They put human capital value, if I recollect at that point of time, as something like 200 crores, and at that time they probably had about maybe 2,000 people. And the way Infosys calculated was following the Stewart's formulation that the earning capability of an employee for the next 5 years can be taken as a human capital value. And they estimated 5-year earning capability of 2,000 employees at that time as something like 200 or 300 crores or something like that. At that time, someone from one of the business magazines asked me, what do you think of this formula of estimating human capital? My response to that was, I think it would be very nice to apply this very formula to those who have used it on the balance sheet and then look at their human capital value. Only thing is you will have to take the time dimension into consideration. For example, jokingly I said that calculate the human capital value of Mr. Narayan Murthy himself when he was working in the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, in the IT department in the year 1970, 71, 72. His human capital value would have been estimated using this formula as less than 5 lakhs of rupees. And what a gross underestimate of the value of talent. And subsequent years have shown that Mr. Narayan Murthy has created millionaires, including some of the people who would never dreamt of. So that means any financial value you put to human beings can at best be an underestimate of the real value. Now I am saying all this because in the last 15 years there has been quite a bit of talk of the concept of intellectual capital. Nowadays, most companies are measured in terms of the market capitalization of the company. Now, if you look at the market capitalization of the company, it is nothing but the number of shares the company has. It is done normally for the public limited or companies which are listed on the stock exchange and so on, you multiply the share price by the number of shares you have, that is the market capitalization. And at one point of time, Bill Gates seemed to have said that this was almost about 10-12 years ago. He said that not more than 3% of the assets I have or market capital I have gets shown in my balance sheet. That means, he said, my balance sheet shows only 3% of the market value, which means balance sheet is normally the tangible assets and that is shown. It was at this point of time we started calculating the tangible assets of Indian companies. Sometime in the year 2003, when I calculated the cost, the tangible assets of companies like Infosys, Wipro and TCS, I discovered that less than 2% of the market capitalization is shown in the balance sheet. That means this, the rest of it is only in the minds of people. That means if your market value is X amount, the tangible assets that you have, which is cash in hand, the land, the buildings, all these kind of things, will account only for 2%. So if you decide to sell the company at a point of time, and not the shares, whatever tangible assets you have, you get only 2% of the value of market capital. So the rest of it is called as intellectual capital. Intellectual capital is the market capital minus tangible assets. And why I am saying all this is because I was just calculating for some of the today's, you are going to have a number of interesting panelists from TCS. Now today's intellectual capital value of TCS, for example, comes to be 80%. That means tangible assets account for only 20% of the market capital. Similarly, if I look at Wipro, it is also coming somewhat similar. 60 to 70% is intellectual capital. Their entire tangible assets are not more than 30% of the market capital. You will find in most of the companies across the world, 70% of the market capital is intellectual capital, only about 30% are tangible assets. Now why I am saying all of it is, I want to pick up an agenda for the HR people. Should HR people work for making sure the company gets its annual targets, and should they contribute to tangible assets or should they contribute to intangible assets? My hypothesis is in the last 2 to 3 decades, HR people spend a lot of their time contributing to tangible assets. It is not they who make the tangible assets, they provide support systems that are required for those who make the tangible assets. Who are either the production people, the finance people, or the service delivery people and things of that kind. At best, the HR person can show that he is saving the costs by showing to the company that instead of getting one type of a consultant, he got another type of a consultant and he probably saved 10 lakhs of rupees or 50 lakhs of rupees. This is a very unfortunate way of looking at things. In other words, I think HR people should not be in the business of contributing to tangible assets. On the other hand, they should be in the business of contributing to intangible assets. Now, what are these intangible assets which keep the market value of a company high? The intangible assets, number one, today are values. Values are very good intangible assets. If TCS, Infosys, Wipro and all these organizations, or for that matter in the pharma industry, a large number of other companies, or if companies like Bajaj or Tata's, other people, they are known for reliability of their promises. They are known for delivering whatever they say. They are known for their quality of products and services. So ensuring that you provide reliable and good quality products and services becomes a very important part of the intellectual capital. That builds brand and that brings up the image of a company in the minds of people. So HR people should therefore focus on making the company reliable, making the company quality driven, and also HR people should focus on getting the right kind of people to do all this. That means value-driven people. I'm sure some of you have recently, about a few weeks ago, seen in the newspapers, there is one particular individual who is leaving one of the top IT companies in Bangalore, and when he is leaving IT companies in Bangalore and he is joining another company in US, suddenly the share value of that company where he is expected to join has gone. Now you can see how good leaders can make a lot of difference in improving the market value of the company. It is quite a usual kind of a thing, and I'm sure most of you remember what happened to the case of Satyam. The day Mr. Rao announced that he is riding a tiger, and on which if he gets down there is a problem, if he doesn't there is a problem, and so on. You saw what happened to market capitalization of Satyam the next few months. It fell down from something like 400 and reached a negative until I think a group of people have salvaged the situation, sold the company, and now it is back at least in business and so on. That means values contribute a great deal to market capital of a company, image of a company, brand of a company, and so on. I think there are many such examples. Therefore, the agenda for human resource people should be more in terms of focusing on talent. In fact, I want to say, in the last few months we have seen what got devalued in India. Rupee got phenomenally devalued, and we all got into jittery kind of a situation. We said that the rupee is going to touch 70 rupees a dollar, dollar has gone up, and so on. So money can get valued and devalued, but there is one thing which will always get upvalued, always, except under certain kind of conditions, and that is talent. Therefore, the most important currency for which the HR people should be working for is talent. That means HR people should be all the time spotting talent, nurturing talent, multiplying talent, and utilizing talent. If talent is not used, it gets into a wastage kind of a situation. So the HR's job should be spotting talented people and bringing up into surface. I assume that everyone is born talented, but through a proper education and training, you can make people a lot more talented and things of that kind, and make sure that this talent is used. I've written in one of my books titled as Economics. I'm sure some of you may have seen is Human Resource Economics, in which I've estimated when you pay a simple 10,000 rupees salary to a person, that person's time costs 1 rupee a minute. If you pay 1 lakh a month, that person's time costs 10 rupees a minute. A 10-minute telephone call uses 100 rupees of the corporation, and when two people talk between themselves, 200 rupees of the corporation on a 10-minute telephone call is wasted. Opportunity cost for this 10-minute telephone call is supposed to be 4 times in a finance company or an IT company, and about 10 times in a manufacturing kind of a company. That means 10-minute telephone calls opportunity cost is about 100 multiplied by 10, about 1,000 rupees in a manufacturing company and 400 rupees in an IT company. So when you make next time a telephone call for 10 minutes, you will ask yourself the question, am I putting my talent to use? Because I am spending 100 rupees on the company, am I getting 400 out of it or 1,000 out of it, and so on. Now this is just to say that talent is the most important resource we have, even if you want to convert it to financial kind of thing. So therefore, the most important task of the HR person is to manage talent and manage time. Now what does all this mean for transforming HR for new business? Now I have identified a few things as imperatives, as a kind of imperatives. If HR people has to give their best, I would say that HR people should start thinking ahead of the CEOs, because the modern CEO today is stuck with so many problems. You can see even a person like Kumar Birla has to now move around meeting the finance minister, meeting the Prime Minister and so on. They have an important role called as boundary management. They have an important role of managing a whole lot of other kind of things. On the top of it, they are driven by quarterly targets, daily kind of turnover, monthly turnover, and annual kind of targets and so on. The most important roles of CEOs today, unfortunately, have become short-term, managing boundaries, managing, of course, various stakeholders and things of that kind. Under these circumstances, there is no guarantee that the CEO of a company is able to think of what adds to the long-term benefit of the company, that is the intellectual capital. The CEO doesn't have time to think. Therefore, I would like to put HR manager as the person who should think of all the intangibles that a corporation can gather for itself. In other words, intellectual capital management should become a primary focus of HR managers. So that is what makes him or her a business, you may call it business partner or business driven. So HR people should think ahead of their CEOs in terms of what practices can we have, what are the kind of values we need to have, how do we maintain our brand image, how do we service our loyal customers, how do we enhance our customer groups and things of that nature. The second most important thing is, it is not enough to think ahead of the CEO. Secondly, you need to think also of ways of influencing the CEO. CEOs have their own perspectives of their world, and therefore HR managers with their understanding of the intellectual capital, values, culture and things of that nature should once in a while be able to direct the CEO's thinking. And I am sure most of you know the story of the way the National HRD Network was born. And the way the National HRD Network was born was very interesting. One of the HR managers in the 1985 conference said that he has been recruited as a HRD manager, but his CEO did not know how to use him. His CEO had no clue of what is HRD, and therefore his CEO started using him to do all routine kind of jobs, including counting tables and chairs and things of that nature. In fact, he said in the conference, I really don't know, I came here to learn from the conference that what can be done when the CEO really uses HRD as a good decorative piece and does not know how to use it. Another HRD manager said, look sir, I was in the same situation when my CEO recruited me, but I did something very interesting. I'll share my experience. This experience might help you. And he said, when my CEO recruited me, he also didn't know what to do with the HRD person, because everyone is having HRD department. He started a HRD department, he recruited me, and since he didn't know, he started putting me to do all kinds of routine things. I almost became something like his executive assistant, maintaining his diary, maintaining visitors, doing public relations and so on. But one fine morning I volunteered and became a member of the local management association and got myself elected to be one of the office bearers. And in one of the meetings I told the local management association, why don't we have a lecture? Many people are talking of human resource development. Why don't we have a lecture on human resource development? We'll have one evening CEO talks on HRD. They all agreed, and then they said, whom do we invite? Then I suggested that they should invite my CEO. They wrote the invitation letter, and when my CEO got the letter, he asked me, because I am the HRD manager, obviously he would ask me. And when he asked me, I said, sir, you must accept this invitation and you should talk about HR. A month later, my CEO came and said, as the day approached now, Mr. Prasad, I am just taking the name of the HRD manager, Prasad, now you asked me to accept this, I have agreed, now what do I talk? It is at this point of time, Mr. Prasad said, I read the book by Udaipur and TV Rao on designing HR systems. I summarized what HRD means and I made a note to him. In those days there was no PowerPoint presentation, there was only, I think, some kind of transparency sheets. I made transparencies and gave it to him. This is what HRD is. So my CEO went and spoke in the seminar on what HRD should be. He comes back and next morning my CEO calls me and says, I spoke all those about HRD, what HRD should be. Now which of these things are we doing? This Mr. Prasad said, now I am in business, because now my CEO, by giving a lecture on what HRD should be, understood HRD and he started making right kind of demands on me. Now I am in business, and the last 6 months to 1 year, I am doing wonderful things, and my CEO follows whatever I say. Now, this is the way to influence the CEOs. Think of the CEO. I think be a kind of a trainer. No CEO may accept you when you say you are a trainer, but there are indirect ways of influencing the thinking of CEOs. If you want to get your CEO to do 360, because many times people complain, my CEO is a wonderful technician, but he doesn't have the right kind of styles. Now, why don't you get him to do a 360-degree feedback? The HR manager says, I can't get him to do 360 because he doesn't believe in 360. He says, oh, all these fellows will tell me what I already know. Now, that is not the way to tell your CEO. Why don't you get your 360-degree feedback? Ask your CEO to assess you. Find out his expectations. Discuss your 360-degree with him. Then very quietly tell him, sir, I found this very useful. I have been able to implement this. Maybe our SPU head should have this. I think that is a way to influence the CEO's thinking. So I think influencing the CEO's thinking by understanding internal process and things of that kind. I think it is very important for HR heads to relook at their time and work out the renewal mechanisms for themselves. I think you need to restructure, balance between long-term things and then the short-term things. Balance between contribution to tangible assets and less tangible kind of assets and things of that nature. The fourth role I would suggest to HR managers is, I think it is very important for us to develop leaders and develop leadership competencies. I'm sure most of you would have read about the Michigan professor who has written on the wonderful book called Leadership Engine. He says the best way to develop leaders best way to be a leader is to develop others as leaders. And if you have to develop others as leaders, you should have a teachable point of view. Each one of us, I think, who are experienced, even students, I think if you are an MBA student, you have a teachable point of view. Those of you who are in the audience, if you happen to be IMU students, you are in the first year or second year, you have a teachable point of view. What is your teachable point of view? The teachable point of view is for those who are appearing for CAT. What is the best way to prepare for CAT? What are the kind of electives you can choose in the second year? What is the best way to use your time in the first year? What is the best way to manage your grades? And what is the best way to learn from your summer placement? So you have a teachable point of view. In fact, in one of my classes, when I asked the students to write down how much can they write about what they can teach others, there is one student, he said, I can easily make about 700 pages of notes starting from his childhood, all that he has learned and how to utilize also kind of alignment things of the kind. So to build leaders, I think we need to create in an organization a learning culture where everyone should respect himself or herself for the lessons he has learned and be willing to communicate whatever one has learned. I have a questionnaire which is called as Personal Effectiveness Questionnaire, which we all use. It's available online on my website, tvrs.com. You can go through this. This questionnaire says 4 things very important for anyone to bring out the talent from within. Number 1, to explore, to do new things, to take initiative. Number 2, to talk about oneself, to communicate, to discuss. And number 3, to seek feedback and learn from the feedback from others. And number 4, to be interpersonally sensitive. With these 4 things, we can articulate, you can generate experiences, articulate your thoughts, and communicate your lessons for others. And that is a good way to build leaders and leadership. Now, HR is a facilitator of creating organizations as learning. Quite often, we look for learning opportunities only in training institutions. I think this is a mistake that we are making. I think the best laboratory for learning is our own organization. And today you don't need to go anywhere. All that you need is to have an internet. Visiting any country, you can learn a hell of a lot from internet. I think we need to make people to learn from each other and learn from internet, not necessarily going anywhere for training programs. I think today, for example, if I'm able to sit in Ahmedabad, I'm not well disposed to come to Udaipur, I would have loved to come to Udaipur, but if I'm able to sit in Ahmedabad and share my thoughts, it is because of the technology. HR people should use the technology to enable people to constantly learn, all the 24 hours, learn from each other, learn from oneself and so on. That is a way to develop leaders and leadership talent. When you develop leaders and leadership talent, what happens is you are using human resources and you are contributing to the so-called human capital, which constitutes a large part of the intellectual capital. I have already covered part of what I am saying in the fifth point, continuous learning. But one point I say, I think it is high time seniors should learn from juniors. I have changed in the recent past my view of performance management. In the past, we used to say performance management means identifying key performance areas and passing the KPIs. The boss tells the junior to have KPIs and targets, and at the end of the year has a performance review discussion to learn to communicate to the junior what he expects from him or her and how much he is happy or unhappy with him and so on. Now I have totally changed it. Performance management system is not merely identifying KPIs. Performance management is managing your performance by learning from juniors. And today the younger people have a lot of talent which seniors do not have. For example, I may not be as tech savvy as a younger person in my organization. So I need to learn how to even prepare a good PPT or how to use in different forms the Excel sheets and things of that nature. I think seniors should learn from juniors, and Gen Y is a wonderful asset that we have. So one of the things the HR people need to do is to create an atmosphere where PMS becomes a two-way tool, and more importantly, it is a tool once in 3 months for seniors to learn from juniors. All 3 months, quarterly review discussion, until quarterly review discussion, juniors are learning from seniors, but once in a quarter, seniors are learning from juniors, and things like that. So HR people need to constantly innovate in terms of finding out what is it that they can learn, create a learning atmosphere. And the sixth task and challenge for HR people, I would say, is make the corporation innovative and promote innovations. I think there is a lot of literature in the recent past on innovations. I would strongly recommend you to read Govindarajan, who used to be one of my colleagues at IIM Ahmedabad. He has been writing quite a lot, and there are many others in India who are writing on importance of innovations. It is innovations which create IPR. IPR brings intellectual capital up. So this is another thing which I think HR people need to really look at. How do I make my corporation innovative? And finally, the HR people should have the very important agenda of developing intellectual capital through creating culture and values. Now here, I remember what my colleague Udaipur used to promote all the time. Octa-based values, openness, collaboration, trust, authenticity, proactivity, confrontation, and experimentation. Octa-based, I think it's written in many of our books. I think creating an octa-based culture where people feel free to express their views and opinions, that is the best way to use the talent. And people collaborate, don't waste their time, always think of larger goals and not get stuck about smaller things and things of that kind. And trust and trustworthiness and teamwork, these are the kind of things that we have talked about. I think every organization, if it creates a culture is lasting. It will take a particular time if the rupee is down against the dollar, or if a particular company is not making profits because of the finance ministry's decision, or the government of India's policy changes. It is the intellectual capital, it is the talent which comes to your rescue. And by creating appropriate kind of a culture, you create a new currency in your corporation. A new currency is not in rupees. New currency is the extent to which people feel proud of belonging to the organization, of manufacturing whatever they are making, or providing services, and hold their head high and walk back then. That is a new currency with which I think the HR should transform. And it is our business to help the CEOs to recognize that currency is not only rupees, currency is talent, currency is happiness, currency is pride, currency is, I think, what people bring and take back home, a smile on their face and things of that nature. That is what is the kind of a transformation that is required. I cannot think of any other person than HR person to do do it. And I would like to appeal to the MBAs in IIM Udaipur, if by chance you are in the class and you are listening, you don't have to specialize in HR and do all these. I think MBA itself prepares you. But do go through some of the courses, which will make you focus your attention on intangible assets. When you go through your marketing courses, you are already doing that. IPR courses, you are already doing that. Go through a few of these minimal kind of courses which can help you to create this kind of an intellectual capital. And you learn a lot. 70% of what you learn is about tangible assets. But I think you should at least spend about 10 to 20% of your time learning about intangible assets. And an MBA contributes, like a HR manager, a lot to the intangible assets. And if you get an opportunity to work with HR people, I would strongly recommend all MBAs in your career. Earliest possible, you work with the HR department. I think that will be a great opportunity. You don't have to give up whether you are a finance guy or a systems guy or a supply chain person. It really doesn't matter. Nothing moves without talent and without people. So you should seek an opportunity to learn by working with HR and achieve the kind of goals that I have talked about. I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity. I have enjoyed sharing my thoughts. And I do not know if your system permits it. If it permits it, I am very happy to answer maybe 2 or 3 questions.
Sir, do we have the time to take a couple of questions from the audience?
Yes, sure. Take it. Is it clear? Whatever I have talked? I am glad this has worked this time.
Yeah, Mr. Rao, you talked about MBAs taking roles in HR function. We would like to have your experience that in today what HR leadership we have in the country, all the HR leadership who is sitting here today, how many of them have worked in the other functions?
I think this is a question you should ask them after you have after my talk. I only will recommend that certain HR people, normally, HR people should work with every function. No person not working with every particular kind of function. I think what is required is other functions working sometime in HR, but no harm. It's a good idea to work as a line manager. In banks, it is quite common. In some of the financial sector, it is quite common. IT sector, it happened the reverse. I think they worked in other functions and moved to HR and things like that. But I think at leisure, when you are in the conclave, you should check with some of them. I know for sure quite a few of them have worked. I know from those who are there, some of them, I think you can ask the people there. I'm sure some of them have. But people I know elsewhere have worked in other kind of functions. I was giving an example this morning of Arvind Agarwal of RPG Group now. He was in quality first, later he was marketing head in Modi's Xerox, then he went on to HR, then he came to market planning, then IT, and then later he was CEO of a company with the Scots, and then he decided to join and become the change agent role in RPG Group. And he has been continuing for the last 10 to 12 years. And similarly, I know several people from State Bank of India who joined some of the companies in South, became heads of IT, and then later on came back to HR and things like that. But in the conclave, you can ask some of the HR managers.
So one of the things that I noticed in your, as you talked about HR function, you have essentially created HR or posed HR as a flag bearer of the intellectual capital or the intellectual investments. Now, the question there would be, do you think that in the current business situation or as businesses evolve, intellectual investment becomes the prerogative of any function in an organization? That becomes possibly the number one priority. So, is HR a facilitator of everybody else doing that, or HR the leader or the flag bearer of doing that?
It is both. It is both the flag bearer and the facilitator. Because everyone contributes. Only thing is they don't remember. For example, a marketing guy marketing, which is closest to actually your income generation or final billing and things of that kind, it does a lot. But marketing, in their eagerness to achieve their targets, may make promises which might in the long term hit negatively the corporation. Similarly, production contributes to every single function contributes to intellectual capital. But by virtue of the way in which they interpret their function, they may not always contribute to intangible assets. They may not always focus on reliability. They may not always focus on quality. Only some departments will focus on this. Therefore, HR becomes a torch bearer of reminding everyone we must be reliable, we must be customer driven, we must be brand building, we must be innovative. These are all intangibles, and intangibles is a part of every function. It is only HR which deals with every single person at the company. Therefore, HR becomes a flag bearer. HR becomes the most, legitimate kind of a person or the team to build intellectual capital with the help of all the other functions. You can't do it alone. But culture is what? Culture has to be the one which is followed by everyone. It is HR through the induction program inculcates culture in the minds of people, through PMS inculcates culture, through training inculcates culture, through 360 inculcates culture. So these are all intangibles which I think HR should take care of as a flag bearer. While it is the job of everyone, it is HR whose, I think, main job will be to contribute to non-tangibles. Other people have a lot of tangibles to take care of. In fact, most of the other functions are measured by tangibles, including the finance department. They are measured by tangibles, not by intangibles. So I think it is the HR whose job is to, talent is an intangible kind of thing, but talent is the most critical kind of thing. It gets shown only in the market value of the company. I hope I answered your question, but this is the view I have. It should do both.